think I'll wait for at least one attendee.
Yeah, sure. No worries.
Yeah, if we don't get one, I can go ahead and start for the recording.
Yeah, you can give it a couple more minutes. So, we'll edit this first part out, so don't even worry about it. We'll start it whenever you actually start the presentation. So don't worry about any of that stuff.
Okay. I see a couple of people have joined, though I only see us. Mickey, I don't know if I'm supposed to see them or.
Oh, you're good. You can. We're live, so feel free to whenever you need to.
All right. Go ahead and kick it off, I guess. Okay, welcome everyone to the webinar. Thank you for joining. I'm Jeff Johnston. Webinar today is going to be Outpace the Competition with Analytics and Business Intelligence, 10 Key Considerations for Distribution Companies. I'll introduce myself here in a second, but our agenda, so there are 10, well, we're looking at 10 key considerations, which you can kind of think of as KPI topics for distribution. I've organized them into procure to pay, operations, order to cash. And then at the end, we'll talk about at a high level some of the Microsoft solutions for these challenges, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So my name is Jeff Johnston. I'm a consulting manager here at Velosio. I've been in IT for 24 years, mostly involved in database administration, data management, data warehouse building, anything with the word data in it. I've worked in for the last 16 years, I've been focused on the Microsoft Dynamics 365 F&O ERP. And I spent 9 years of that in industry working as director of IT for a telecommunications electronics distributor. And then for the last 7 years, I've been in consulting with an ERP focus and data analytics. So topic number one is actually, it's a little bit of a cheat. I'm saying why analytics and business intelligence. And this is because those two terms are used interchangeably very frequently. And they're also, which is okay, but they're also frequently used interchangeably with reporting. And one thing I wanted to stress at the top is that analytics and business intelligence is not reporting. They often fall under the same umbrella, but technically speaking, business intelligence and business analytics make up data analytics as an umbrella topic. I'm primarily going to be seeing analytics or data analytics encompassing both during this presentation. I wanted to stress I do not mean reporting. So reporting is a data dump of what's happened with your business in the past, whether at a summary level or in a transaction level. It's kind of just data, right? It might be filtered, it might be summed, but it's not analytical in nature. And none of what I'm talking about is really going to be reporting. Business intelligence, a subset of data analytics, is analysis that helps you understand kind of the how and the why of things that have happened in your business. And then business analytics is meant to be predictive and help you predict or change what's been going on with your business. Again, I'll probably say data analytics or analytics primarily, but I wanted to cover why we're talking about this. We're not just going through a list of reports. So the first kind of KPI topic is vendor fulfillment. This is your typical vendor scorecard. Percent on time delivery, percent late, what's your defect rate. But I did want to call out, so really any company selling tangible goods, buying tangible goods from a vendor, it's gonna depend on these metrics. But In distribution, I really feel like your relationship with your vendors and suppliers is a key part of your business, and you're a key part of their business, more so than a typical B2B or B2C type operation. Because if you think about it, you're filling a central part of their supply chain. You are basically the order to cash or fulfillment part of a major vendor supply chain. So having those relationships, developing those relationships is really critical as a distributor. And this information and this analysis is key to understanding how good of a relationship do you have, well, how good is their performance. This isn't going to be an adversarial thing when they're late. You just need to know and help work out with them and improve that. And then on time delivery and accurate estimates are obviously important with respect to keeping your customers happy. I think the recent volatility in the supply chain due to COVID-19 has exposed this to people outside of our industry and common public and others that maybe didn't really think about supply chain or think about, do you have things in stock, or is it going to be on time, delivered on time? Are you going to be able to deliver all of it? Those types of things. I've also got defect rate on here, and defect rate and quality management may not be super critical to all distributors, but certain categories of goods, like electronics being one, chemicals or food products, food and beverage products being another, quality management is critical, and you will receive things that don't pass inspection, and you'll have to send them back. So knowing how often that happens, the reasons that happens, is an important tool for running your business. And I've got average procurement cycle on here, which is total days to fulfill, but I'm really referring to, whoops, sorry about that. Need to learn how to scroll this without my wheel here. So what I'm referring to there is, what is the total time from when you decide to initiate a purchase requisition through delivery and invoice of the goods from the vendor? What is the total cycle of that by item or by vendor? Next area is vendor profitability. I don't think you typically think of your vendors in terms of profitability, and these would be important metrics for any business, but for distributors in particular, you often see the 80-20 rule applying, where 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your vendors, sometimes less, sometimes it's even one, sometimes it's two or three. Therefore, knowing how much each vendor contributes to your bottom line is important. And I am referring to customer sales, customer revenue here, and these can get complicated if you have kitting or you're not selling things at a one-to-one basis from what you're buying from a vendor to what you're selling. But understanding the relative importance of those vendors to your company is important. And then invoicing accuracy kind of ties back to the fulfillment performance. Are they billing you on time? Are they billing you correctly? Are they consistently overbilling you? Are they billing you for goods not delivered, which is a very common scenario I've seen. You order 10, you get 5, but they still bill you for 10. Those are things you need to know and address. So now we move into the operations portion of it. Title this one warehouse efficiency. So this is really your performance in the warehouse, and depending on your warehousing needs and the complexity of your operations, as well as which warehouse management system you have in place, you may not be able to know all these things or have all these things. But if you do have advanced warehousing and have access to this data, these are important analytics for improving your overall efficiency. So how much time does it take? How much labor and overhead does it take to receive a PO? What is the time per delivery, per shipment? What's the time per PO? What's your time to put it away, to cross stock it? You want to look at that by worker, see who your underperforming workers are. And same thing for picking. How quickly can you get an order picked and packed and shipped? That can be looked at by worker as well. These are really important analytics for helping you identify areas where you can improve your speed and efficiency by identifying areas for improvement, which could also cut overhead depending on how the magnitude of the improvements you can implement. A lot of people want the advanced warehousing for the transactional and the direction and the inventory accuracy, but it gives you data too that isn't always looked at. And And then inventory, I'm saying inventory scorecard, it's really your inventory information. This is another big one for anyone selling tangible goods, and being efficient with your on-hand inventory is more important than ever with the recent supply chain disruptions. Most companies know this, but it's not free to have inventory in your warehouse. Having something sitting there that you haven't sold, that isn't moving, costs money. There's carrying costs behind that. So understanding what those costs are while keeping enough inventory to fulfill customer demand is important, and you need to know these things. What does your inventory aging look like? How much value of inventory do you have by SKU? What's your back order rate? How often are you getting orders for things you can't fulfill? Shrinkage happens in any warehouse, and you can identify it through cycle counting, but certain goods and items have innate shrinkage that you have to track, thinking back to the chemical example or things of that nature. So shrinkage is important. Days on hand is important for demand forecasting, which I'll talk about a little later. And then what are your fast movers? Inventory turnover, your ABC analysis of your items. So this can help you, this can tie back into optimizing your warehousing efficiency. You want to put your faster moving items in areas that are easier or faster to pick, and slower moving items can go in your more remote areas. And then bailment reports, I have bailment on here, and I use the R word, report here, but bailment doesn't apply to every distributor, but it is a common distribution scenario where you're taking goods into your warehouse that you don't own, the vendor retains ownership of. So whenever you're physically responsible for something that you don't have financial ownership of, it's important to have good data and analytics on that so you know where you're at in case something happens or you get queried by the vendor or the customer. Item profitability, this one's pretty self-evident. You need to know what your profits by item are. What are your most profitable items so you can promote them more? Do you have low margin items that are fast movers? Are they fast moving enough to justify carrying them? Do you need to promote them more? But this last bullet, the profit and cost trends, is where analytics can really shine and help your business here. You know, so COVID-19 exposed this concept to a lot of people. But if your supply chain is limited or the raw materials that your vendors use are limited and purchasing costs of inventory goes up, and you need to identify that trend as early as you can to account for it in your pricing, to account for it in your budgeting and all sorts of areas. I'll give you an example. We used to, when I was in electronics distribution, the cost of copper started to skyrocket. I think we all remember that time period. I think copper is still pretty volatile and increasing very quickly, but copper is a main component for all electronics. So in order for us as a distributor to provide a sales quote to a business in a B2B transaction, we had to make a call to the London Metal Exchange to find out the current rate of copper and factor that into the sales quote amount. This led us to realize that we really should be using LIFO costing methodology with those items. So LIFO is last in, first out, if you're not familiar, which helps you minimize your tax obligations. And it was really the trend analysis that highlighted that for us. Now, copper is an extreme example. We probably could have done that without the analytics, but we did have analytics and it did help us out there. And again, with the volatility we're seeing in supply chain these days, timely trend analysis is very important. Okay, now we're into the order to cash. And this one, customer fulfillment, is mostly a mirror of the vendor fulfillment, except this time we're grading ourselves. How are we performing at fulfilling our customer orders? How often are we on time? How long is it taking us lead time average? How often are we having to back order something that we can't ship right away because we don't have it in stock? Are we delivering things accurately? And then our customers returning items, what are the reasons they're returning? Trend identification there is important. And I should have put demand forecasting as the last bullet because demand forecasting is not mirrored in the vendor fulfillment, but we could spend an entire webinar just talking about demand forecasting and the different tools and techniques for it, but they all of them require good data and analytics, particularly sales data and trends and inventory data and information. And this is kind of a subset of the customer fulfillment, but I've got freight as its own thing. primarily because freight is challenging. I'm primarily referring to freight for customer orders, so that doesn't, it's not necessarily exclusive to customer orders. This could apply to transfers. This could apply to even your purchase orders if you're estimating and paying your own freight. But like I say, there are a lot of challenges around freight. Are you offering free freight? What are the actual costs that you get invoiced for from freight? Are you passing that on accurately to the customer? Are you making or losing margin? Is it impacting your margin? All of these questions require analytics and BI to answer. I've got delivery address accuracy down here, and I'm not referring to did you get the right address on the order. This is a situation where if you ship something to an address that your freight provider thinks is a commercial address, but it's residential, they'll upcharge you. So the estimate you provided your customer is inaccurate, and you end up eating those costs typically. Same thing for accessorials, such as a lift gate. You get to a warehouse and it requires the lift gate to get unloaded, and you didn't know that ahead of time. You get charged for that. So identifying trends on this overall loss or impact to revenue from freight is actually quite challenging. Analytics helps with that. You have to have the underlying data from your freight provider. I'll give you an example here. The electronics distributor I worked for used to offer free freight on orders over a certain dollar amount. But we got dinged a lot with those, and we did data scrubbing. We sent an API call on the address to find out if it was residential or commercial, and we asked the customer to tell us if they needed a lift gate and whatnot. But they still, we would get bills that didn't match our estimates to the customer, and we had to eat those. And the CEO was on a rampage about us losing $60,000 a year in freight due to us miscalculating freight, misestimating freight, not having things correct. And it took two business analysts doing quite a bit of analytic legwork, because we didn't have built-in analytics for this at the time, to discover we were in fact not eating $60,000 a year in freight. It came out in the wash. The ones we overestimated were offset by the ones we underestimated, and we were okay. But that's important to know as well. If we had been losing $60,000 a year or more, we would have wanted to adjust the free freight cutoff or bake more freight into our pricing structure. All of that required analytics to know. And here's the big one: customer profitability. Although I would actually go against the grain and argue that for a distributor and distribution, the earlier profitability and revenue per vendor are slightly more important to this. Both are important, and I've been talking about building the relationship and the partnership with your vendor being important in distribution, but you're primarily in B2B as a distributor, so that same relationship and same thing applies to your customer. And especially if the 80-20 rule applies and you've got really big customers that drive a lot of your business, you have to build and maintain that relationship with them. So knowing these things helps you with that. And again, it's not adversarial, it's a partnership. You're trying to build that relationship out. If you have to adjust pricing because your margin's too low, or work with your customers on these items, these analytics are very important. And I want to call one out specifically here: total COGS, and I'm saying including order servicing, returns, CRM, everything that it takes in distribution. Again, you're typically B2B, so you've got to onboard. There's real cost to onboarding a customer, getting their account signed up, going through the CRM process, servicing their account, and then processing the orders, answering customer service calls. And I've seen distributors spend weeks getting a customer set up, and then taking customer service calls, and they're ordering $30 a month in small items. So you really need your customer metrics and analytics to know this, because there's real opportunity costs to spending that bandwidth servicing a customer that's either very low revenue, whether it's high margin or not. If it's $30 a month, the margin's kind of irrelevant, when you could be spending that time on your bigger or more profitable customers. Additionally to that, the concept of an unprofitable customer is very real in distribution for those same reasons. That $30 a month customer, you're losing money on that because you're paying your account reps and your packers and your pickers and the salespeople that sign them up, all cost money, and then you're not making that back on what you sell. And simply looking at your how much you make per item isn't telling the whole story there. So it really takes analytics to track that and analyze that. And it's very, very important in distribution. Okay, we're pretty good on time. So our last topic, number 10, is the Microsoft solutions for these analytics and KPIs. We could easily spend a 30-minute webinar on each of these bullet points, but I'm going to try to keep it at a higher level. So they all relate to each other. These are all Microsoft offerings. So Power BI is probably the one you've heard the most. It's got BI in the name, right? You see it the most. You've probably all shared or used Power BI reports at work, whether it's for these types of KPIs or internal KPIs or any number of other things. I've been working with Microsoft products, data products for close to 30 years now. Power BI is far and away the most impressive and powerful tool that I've ever seen come out of Microsoft. Its ability to ingest and analyze large data sets just sitting on your desktop is really phenomenal. But as impressive as it is and as important as it is, it's the final layer of analytics for visualizations and presentation and for distribution of your analytics. And then it can conduct its own analysis of the data sets, but without a data set to ingest, Power BI is nothing more than a really shiny version of Excel, right? More capable, but it needs data to power it. So that's where these other tools come in. So Azure Data Lakes and Azure Synapse is Microsoft's cloud data lake storage offering. It's very low cost, well, I should say very, but it is low cost and high performance. It's also very flexible. When you're talking about a data lake, you're talking about unstructured data. It's not data in an RDBMS. This is unstructured data sitting in the data lake that you can ingest into Power BI and do your analytics on. You can feed it through machine learning, which I'll talk about here in a second. But it's the storage, it's the data lake aspect of analytics. Azure Machine Learning, which Microsoft offers, is AI as a service as opposed to data storage as a service or software as a service. And it allows you to leverage the power of the Azure cloud to run machine learning models. Now, you typically this is more sophisticated stuff. This is you build your models with a data scientist, and they can leverage Azure Machine Learning, I shouldn't say AML, to perform that analysis without having to have high-powered hardware on site. Power Platform. Now, Power Platform comes up a lot. It is a platform as a service, is what they call it, and it actually encompasses a lot of different things. Because within the Power Platform are individual Power Apps, and hundreds of Power Apps that do different things. Not all of them are analytics tools. In fact, a pretty small minority of them are analytics tools specifically. So Power Platform is not an analytics tool by itself, but the different Power Apps allow you to connect systems, to extract data, hydrate your data lake, transform your data, consolidate your data into your data lake for consumption by Power BI. And technically, Power BI is part of the Power Platform. The name Power there. Power BI is one of the Power Apps and is part of that. So that's a really commonly used tool these days for building your data lakes. I say common. I haven't not used that for a data warehousing in several years now. And then you're going to hear about the Dataverse or the Common Data Model or the CDM or the CDMA, Common Data Model for Analytics. The name changes kind of frequently, but it's designed as a unified solution, unified data model for populating data in a structured format, so it's not unstructured, in a standardized layout that Microsoft offers out of the box connectors to lots of different systems. Not every system, but it's every major system: SAP, Oracle, F&O, CE, BC, any major ERP or CRM, Salesforce, and application that you can think of. Microsoft offers a connector for pulling data from that into the Dataverse. This can be used for integrations, this can be used for syncing data, but this can also be used to have kind of canned analytics tools built on top of. So it's I would say a rapidly evolving tool offering from Microsoft. I would categorize it as a ERP CRM centric tool. These other things I've spoken about aren't necessarily strictly. You could use it to analyze any. You could use it to analyze scientific data if you want, but the Dataverse is really more for you know, typical ERP, CRM, sales data, procurement data, that sort of thing. And that concludes the content I've got. I can't see folks' names, but if anybody has any questions, we can open up now for that. Feel free to type them in the chat or raise your hand. I don't know if that's a thing in WebEx. Nope. Okay. Well, if you do have any questions about any of this or about getting started with this, feel free to reach out to myself or Mickey. We can, or just Velosio in general. We can definitely help. Be happy to answer any questions and get you started on the road toward distribution analytics.